Are we live? Hello, everyone.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good. We're doing a webinar. We're joined by Kevin Barrett in Washington, District of Columbia, our head of engineering.
Hello.
Kevin, just for everybody to know, Kevin loves doing media. He's a huge ham. He's really excited to be on camera and just talk to an audience. It's his favorite thing in the world. And I just think that's beautiful, Kevin. I'm really glad you're here.
Welcome, Kevin. It's going to be fun.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've been counting down the
great.
days.
It's great. No, I'm sure you have, actually. It's special. You really dread this when you're not someone who does it all the time. So we're going to have a good time. We are going to talk about the thing, Richard, the big thing, the heffalump in the room, as I like to call it.
You're Paul Ford.
Yes, I'm not the heffalump in the room.
I'm Rich Ziade.
That's Kevin Barrett. We are the leadership team of a company called Board. That's an AI-focused software acceleration platform. We'll talk about it for like a minute, but that's actually, we're not really going to pitch it in this talk.
No, we're not, but we have a fun podcast that talks about AI and software and culture, and it's really cool. So check it out.
It's true. If you like this
the Board podcast.
If you like this webinar, you're going to like the podcast.
Of the podcast.
Imagine this webinar, but like every week at the same time.
All the time. Exactly.
All right, good. So I think I'm going to share a screen so we have things to talk about. You don't just have to look at our beautiful faces. A few things. So there is chat. The chat is being monitored by our expert chat monitoring expert, Gabe. So we'll be filtering it in case you just, don't say anything too weird, and putting it into a special view that pops up on Riverside and forces us to answer your questions. Feel free. What we're going to do, let me just talk for a minute. I'm about to bring up a deck. We're going to talk about three things. First thing, we're just going to do like a blitz tour of the vibe coding space.
Oh boy.
With a few little opinions and some personal experiences, but think like a few minutes. We're just going to get through it because I just don't want to talk about other people's apps all day. Then we're going to do a role play section.
Okay.
But it will be very safe for work. And then we're going to talk about how the entire software development lifecycle may be changing, which some of you are going, oh God. And some of you are going, yeah. And so we'll try to make it good for everybody, which I think is kind of the most important thing that we could talk about. So this won't just be tips and tricks. It's going to be kind of like, how are our jobs changing, and a little bit of how can we get ready for the future. So
let's do it.
Unless anyone has any objections, I'll bring up a deck.
Rock and roll.
All right, thank you. What's the weather like in DC there, Kevin?
It's warming up. It was very cold, and now it is not so cold.
Same here in New York City. I don't know if you mentioned we're in New York City. We are coming to you live from New York City.
All right. There we go. I can see it. It's got the little menu on the, oh no, we're good. We're good. It all worked out. Everything's good. But Kevin, we won't be able to see your face too much. So, if you need to register horror or upset, actually, wait, maybe we can't. There we go. Yeah, we can. We can see your face.
I was fine without seeing my face.
No, we're doing it. Okay, so we're going to talk about the state of vibe coding. The first thing I want to do, I'll drive a little bit, and what'll happen is I'll talk a bunch, and then everyone will start interrupting. Me. The first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about the patterns in this space and kind of like what are the big broad buckets of companies, right? And so the first one is platforms, and we'll give you some examples in a second, but these are like, here's your box, type into it, and we'll make you whatever you want. And that is your Claudes and your ChatGPTs. We'll talk about them in specific. Then we got the vibe coders, which are like, come on in, we're going to build software right now. I'm not really interested in a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I want to start coding. And kind of want to build you a whole thing. Then you get spec-based, okay?
Which is a new thing.
It's a new thing. And that's like, we're going to actually slow you down. Slow you down there, buddy. We're going to do some thinking. We're going to do some architecture before we build. And then you got the IDEs, like Cursor and so forth. And they're kind of, they're in your apps. They're helping you. And then a few other kinds besides. But we're going to run them through. And I think what we're going to do, I came up with a few sort of like what makes them a little bit different from each other. I got to say, there's a lot of overlap in this space.
A lot of overlap.
Kind of hard to tell the difference sometimes. And so, Kevin, I'm going to throw it to you every now and then, but I think we're going to just sort of drive through. First one, actually, when we're talking about elephants in the room, this is like a million elephants, because for all that everybody talks about AI, there's always Google lurking in the background.
It's kind of hovering more like.
And Gemini is sort of like, it doesn't get all the heat and the light that like Sam Altman brings to OpenAI.
Yeah.
But it does a lot of everything, and it does some things very well, especially like image generation, and so on and so forth. Very good notebook. And they've taken a lot of swings at code. It's a very interesting platform because it's not necessarily the best coding platform, I think, today, but it has other features. Like it will, if you use Gemini, you can use the image generation functions in your code. You
Mm,
can use the code in your smart notebooks. You
mm.
can also count that this is going to scale and work in a more reliable way because it's Google,
Yep.
right? And so it's very googly, it's very notebooky, and it almost feels in a funny way like they're letting it just bake in the oven a little bit longer.
Well, they can bet on everything.
Yeah, that's what's
And
real.
you know, don't uh i- the- don't underestimate Google's endurance in this race. They're going to keep at it. It's
Well,
getting
remember
better.
there were like 3 years where people were like, "Man, Google's just never gonna
Well,
figure
they
it out."
missed the boat. Meanwhile, they've been cooking for a while,
Th
and now stuff's starting to come out on a pretty steady clip.
They can always show up. You're like, "They missed the boat," but they can always show up with like 5 aircraft carriers when they're in the
Yeah,
field, right?
exactly,
So,
exactly. Or a Disney cruise ship,
yeah, one or the
depending on
other.
what
Well, no,
what
now
they
Disney's
decide
done
to.
its deal with OpenAI. Now we're gonna talk about Claude Code, and actually, so Claude Code so Gemini is funny because, like, the coding experience just, like, I don't know, I just don't hear anybody talking about it very much. Everybody, including me, is talking about Claude Code,
Yeah,
and
it's worth mentioning here when you say platforms, these are tools for engineers.
but if you go to Claude.ai because you are a Claude subscriber, there is a button that says Claude Code. If you go to ChatGPT, which we'll talk about in a second, so anybody who does, they are for engineers. They
Yeah,
do help you code.
yeah,
They create apps and platforms for you, but they're kind of built into the platform, which is really meaningful because you're paying the subscription fee already.
yeah.
Okay, so what they're saying is like, oh, you guys like to write code? Cool. We'll keep lock you in. We'll also make your
So you're saying
pictures.
yes, these are for engineers.
They are, but they're features of the larger platform.
Yes,
So it's a way,
yes.
basically engineers and software building is a way for them to get more lock in.
Make software with AI, but you have to be fairly technical to kind of understand the contours of it.
Yes, but again, right, I could pay Claude to answer my questions,
Yeah.
or I could pay it to engineer,
Yes.
same bill. There's no difference.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
that's when I say it's like a box to type into. These are the big platforms.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. They're
You're
like,
a fan.
Claude Code is excellent. It
Yeah.
is very, very helpful. It does less than a lot of other tools. You can't really make images with Claude.
It's not the point.
I think they have the best product sense of any of the AI companies because they do less, but they
Yeah.
do it well. I
Yeah.
used their Vision API the other day and it described a PDF to me, like sort of pulled out the data.
Mm.
Just these are really nerdy, deep things, but really
Yeah.
good. I think of them in the same way I think of like Google early days. Just very, very engineering focused. And wow, does it code. I mean, Kevin, you have a lot of direct experience here. Like, how would you talk about this product? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, it is of the kind of CLI agents I've used, it's the best.
CLI meaning like you're typing into a terminal and kind of like it's
Yes.
pretty, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interacting with a program that I run on my machine, and it has access to my hard drive. It is certainly the best. You have to like know how to use it, but it is of the code of all the tools I've used to generate code, it generates the best code. It's certainly like tilted in that direction, and I mostly
Like the
see Anthropic
quality
talking
of
about.
the fun. Just drill in on that a little bit, right? So the quality of like code is made up of lots of functions. I'll be really reductive, but like you write a function and give it data, and data comes out. And so, what's the difference? Like, what makes quality here? What makes you think it's better?
I mean, why it's better, I think, is that Anthropic, the makers of Claude, have trained it on a corpus of data that includes a lot more code. I think that the model itself is tilted toward code. At least I suspect as much. I'm not an AI like post tuner, but I do think that has an effect, and I also think that it's a little bit like the UX around the LLM. So when you run Claude Code, there's this kind of whole thing that happens in your terminal, and Anthropic has invented lots of patterns for controlling the LLM, like skills and agents, these things that kind of
Rein it
corral
in.
it or point. Yeah, exactly. Point it in a direction, say go
Yeah.
here and not there, and those are really helpful, right? Because like using all of these tools, it's 90% telling it what not to do, and
Mhm.
Claude is good at being
We've
told
said
that.
this before. A lot of the innovation around AI after the big breakthrough is guardrails. Like you're actually building more and more guardrails so that it's more predictable and more deterministic.
It really, I guess I would say when I use it, I really sort of, it's funny because when you think about product, people often think about applications on your phone or something, but it's really a product. Like it's a lot of scaffolding and a lot of systems thinking has gone into how do we make engineering sort of more productive with this
Sure.
platform. And so that I think we're kind of fans here. I think we're not alone. I think the whole development community is paying attention. I will say, just like a piece of advice, if you are at all a programmer or an engineer and you're like, I don't really know what to make of this stuff, just go use this thing for 2 hours and then make a more informed decision. Like, I just really think you got to feel it. It's worth a little money and it's really worth your time. This is the state of the art as far as the industry is concerned today. And then there's this sort of, it's a lot of elephants in a lot of rooms. The room is actually, the floor is creaking because then you've got ChatGPT, which I'm not going to explain what ChatGPT is, but they kind of have their own, right? So they've got Codex, which is their coding tool. It is multimodal like Google. Like you already know ChatGPT probably. And so this is, I will say it feels a little bolted on. They have really good APIs for getting data out of ChatGPT. We use those at work a lot, like, but it keeps getting lapped by Claude. And every time I go in to look at it, I kind of end up drifting back to Claude. Like it's just they haven't really found a reason to exist except that they want to also own this part of the world. With Google, you've got everything Google does. With Claude, you've got this real focus on a developer experience that's very sensitive to how developers work. And with ChatGPT, if Claude is the new Google of AI, which I know is confusing because we're also talking about Google, I really see ChatGPT as kind of the Microsoft. Like we're going to get you just enough of everything. We'll lock you in.
Yeah.
It'll be good enough. And if you complain, go complain to your CTO. It's not my problem. So those are the big ones. I think what's tricky is they may just be in it to win it because all the smaller vibe coding tools are downstream of them, often using their LLMs.
Yeah.
And so
It's tooling that repackages outputs from the big players
that's right. Now
effectively.
Richard, you used Lovable a little bit, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So it's another, you go to it, it's got a box you type in, but in this case, the box is not, it won't also answer questions about your love life unless you really push it to. It is really optimized towards building an application.
it is. Early days and we've been tracking these things for a while. They really fell down when you tried to drag a full stack app across the line. They were good for prototyping. They're still pretty good for prototyping. They're good for, I don't apps that have much smaller surface areas.
You know
Like,
what's fun? You know what's fun for about 30 minutes? A magic act. You know what's not fun after about 4 hours?
Magic Acts.
Not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you're seeing now, I have a theory around all this whole category we're about to talk about, which is they got a lot of free fuel because non-engineers played with them.
Product managers.
Product managers, executives who quietly in the dark wanted the app that they'd been asking for a really long time. But what they found was the shine came off real fast. To Paul's point, magic after 30 minutes is not magic anymore. So what they're doing, which is what they're going to have to do, which is build out the other less glamorous pieces of what makes software work, like databases and persistence layers and logic and things like that.
Are they, so they're kind of full stack, right? Like they'll give you a database.
I think, yeah, I think they do. There's, I think, Lovable Cloud, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot going on here, right? Replit is going through the same thing.
Replit was the really nerdy one. Like it started doesn't have a name like Lovable, has a name like Replit.
Yes.
Same idea, go type in the box, but it really started as like a browser-based IDE. Like REPL is like the repeat loop. It's you're typing
That's right.
commands
They
in.
predate AI.
Yeah, it's sort of an old school programming tool. Really smart people do like Replit a lot. Like I would say, like it's for the deep nerds. Whenever we talk to people, they're like, "Well, what do you do that's different than Replit?" And so I think it did kind of land Lovable feels like it's kind of still skimming the surface a little bit. It does feel like Replit is in a lot of engineering teams all
Yeah.
around the
And
world.
look, it's worth mentioning these are very, very well funded companies. They're all racing. Everybody's building everything. The challenge you run into with these tools, including Replit, frankly, is they sort of skip architecture and they just run to gluing components together. It's usually React stuff, and it's
Be mindful, we're talking a little bit vibey because somebody could pop up like a woodchuck could pop out of the floor right now and be like, "Well, it's really good at architecture if you do this, that, or the other."
yeah. I mean,
But I,
look, these are flexible tools,
but I,
right?
I will tell you anecdotally, because we're kind of downstream of a lot of stuff. We hear a lot about these projects. Replit is like it seems to be the champion of like we couldn't quite get it over the line right now.
I think they're all like that.
We hear a lot of that.
Yeah, and
Well, I
look,
think maybe lovable people give up sooner.
listen, if you just need to make a website for your coffee shop, these tools are pretty good. Like
Kevin,
they're
do you,
gonna kind of get it done. Now, if you need to build a CMS
Mhm.
for your coffee shop, that's going to be trickier. They get close. That's the thing that's so tantalizing.
don't build a CMS for your coffee shop. I can just tell you that as a consultant.
Yeah, don't do that. But
Kevin, do you have thoughts in these tools, or have we just covered everything incredibly well?
I mean, you've done a great job. I am
Thank
not
you.
the target audience of these tools, so like I have not used them, and my opinion is that all of these tools are going to be destroyed by the foundation models that we just talked about earlier.
There's a couple more just to
yep,
mention, and we're just doing the quick survey, right? Like Bull is really focused on the prompt. That's the one, like, they want to keep you there typing. And they have like, like a little, everybody's got their angle, right? So, but I got to tell you, I was squeezing to figure out why they're different from each other.
they're
Yeah.
getting
Like,
hard to distinguish. The space has gotten pretty crowded.
very,
Yeah.
everybody's kind of basically got, here's how to differentiate. Here's the patterns. Like, we offer a database and a cloud-based environment for hosting. We're going to take you all the way through and it'll all be on our
Yeah.
stack. Versus we'll generate a lot of code. You can take that code with you or we'll put it on GitHub,
Yeah.
but we'll get you started and we'll get you going. Bolt is another one that's growing fast, although at the same time, and again, this is hard to figure out, you often keep hearing that like, well, maybe the signups aren't that good these days. Like, this category is a tricky one because some people will tell you this is the absolute future
Yeah.
and this is how all development will be. And other people will tell you that no, not really. And they're losing audience share. And meanwhile, like these behemoths, Claude's going to be a $300 billion company when it goes public or more, right? Like they're just coming out and saying, or Anthropic are just really starting to kind of take this category away from them. Now we start to get a little weirder and maybe a little more distinct. So spec-based.
Let's set this one up.
Yeah. What is a spec?
Okay, a spec is something akin to a blueprint of what you're going to build. It's detailed, and detailed spec is short for specification, that in a very detailed way outlines all the bits of what your software should do. Specifications used to get written, they still get written for other humans to consume. Like it's sort of almost like a contract. So
Nice
I
50
interviewed
page.
Yeah, I interviewed all the users and all the business stakeholders, and it's down to this. And now I'm going to ship this big, thick document that describes the software off to a shop in, offshore, or I'm going to put it out for bidding so that an agency can build it, or I'm going to give it to my team.
A good thing to remember about specs is they're purely about de-risking, right? Like it was so expensive to run to code.
Correct.
And you can build prototypes and you can mess around, but building a big system without a really clear specification and understanding of architecture is how you get in a world of trouble.
That's right.
And
Now
so
it's
a spec is an insurance policy.
It is in the human world. Now, what's interesting about specs in the AI world, in the vibe coding world, is that they're really good. Why? Because when you just type 3 sentences in a box, AI won't come back to you very often, will not come back to you and say, you left a lot of ambiguity there. I'm not going to make any assumptions. AI will make assumptions. Like that's what it does. It's inclined to move forward. And so 2 sentences means there's tons of gaps of clarity around what you should build. So the thinking is, why don't we give AI a spec? And that's happening. Kiro, which is Amazon,
Yep.
is similar in that before you see it spewing out code, it spews out a document
Right.
like
So
a
you're gonna prompt it not to create your app, but to create a specification for your app. And if you create that little space in the middle, the idea is you will de-risk the output. And I will say, like,
it's better.
well, and it's not just that. Like, we do this. Like, Kevin, you're building systems like this. Like, this idea is correct. The idea that the real question, the real question for all vibe coding is,
Yeah.
when do I code?
Yeah, I think there's a fatal flaw with spec-driven AI tools,
Yes.
and it is this: that the plain English artifact has to leap to code, and that inference gap is too wide. You're still leaving it to chance for the models to effectively translate English language descriptions of software into the actual software. And the truth is, most people, when they write specs, don't write them for the purposes of machine consumption. They write them, remember, these models are drafting specs off of other
The
specs.
point of a spec is for humans to develop.
Correct. And the way Kiro writes credible specs is it looks at the other specs in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And so, which isn't ideal for machine consumption because machines don't think in a narrative sense, they think structurally. Right. And so I think that's where they still fall short.
I think what's tricky with all this stuff is I can show you examples where the specification was transformed in the application and it was flawless. But the reality is that we're looking for, what steps do we need to take to de-risk the process so it's repeatable? The Kiro approach is, if we take the spec approach, we'll have a more predictable outcome. And we're Amazon and we like predictable outcomes. Boy, do we.
Yes.
Right? And so
GitHub has one too.
yeah, and GitHub is a funny one in all this. They have this thing called Spec Kit. But the thing with GitHub that it's again kind of another one that may be in it to win it, because all the devs already use it, and they started with Copilot, and it's just sort of like, it's Microsoft owns it. Like, I don't know, Kevin, I don't even know. Do we use a lot of GitHub's AI features as a development firm? How come?
No.
Why do we use other things instead?
The Copilot is commonly considered kind of bad. At least it's not at the same level as like Claude, for instance. And the features that you might be offered by GitHub out of the box, like automated code reviews, is a big one. Every time that we've played with them, they've been fairly low impact or a distraction, right? It'll flag things that are not true.
I mean,
Sorry,
you're highlighting
it's partially a result of like the technology is new. It's partially that our stack is using a language that LLMs are not very good at. But yeah, we don't use this really, and I don't know a lot of people who are.
That's a very good point, though. If you use JavaScript and build web applications, you get better results with all of these.
because it knows it better.
It just had more to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There's another one. It's called, so I think like you have to watch GitHub, but I also like, I think, Kevin, your story is pretty normal. Like, people are like, yeah, some people do like Copilot, but they see it almost as like glorified code completion as opposed to like how they want to live their life. Whereas Claude is way more like, I guess we're here now. This is what
Yeah.
we're going to do all day. That's all I didn't know very well. You know, it just sort of, there's very, as we get into the spec space, we're getting less and less sort of volume. This is a more, people kind of liked running the code, and there's less excitement in this space, but I think it's really worth
Or
observing.
they're doubling back because it didn't work.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And
That's
so
right.
they're doubling back and they're like, we got to try a different approach. And the truth is, they're on the right track with specs.
Yeah.
Like, specs help. Do they solve it? Not yet.
So Tesla is, you know, how is it different? It has a lot of money. It's going to be around for a while. Very focused on privacy and security. Everybody's taking a swing at the same problem, right? And so that's Tesla. Then we get to the IDEs, and I won't go over. We can just. I want to get to the role play. I say that a lot. The cursor is sort of it's the beast, right? It's
It
the big
is.
one in the room. It's based on VS Code, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I think, yeah. And I think you can,
See,
it's code plus plugins.
so you just got like all those million. If you've never installed VS Code, you are in for a world of absolute disappointment. It just is like 8 million things flying at your face. Developers are really used to it, and it just kind of does everything all at once. So you just put AI in there to help you write the code. It can look pretty magical. It just sort of feels like for the developers who like to work this way and it's a big environment and they have a lot of legacy code or like
Cursor's LLM agnostic. You
no,
can
it's
plug
actually
in any.
it's a yes, but they're really taking a play. This one is the biggest swing. They're building their own model. Okay, so they
Oh,
want to build like
good times.
they really want to own this space.
Kevin, do you use Cursor?
I have not used Cursor. I do think briefly with regard to building their own model that it's really good to shout out they have to do this, right? Like the reason all of these tools, aside from the initial ones we talked about, like Gemini and Claude and OpenAI,
Yeah.
all the tools after that are arbitraging tokens, right? Those tools, their unit of measurement is the token, and they charge some number of fractions of cents per token. And all these tool cents are just charging you slightly more fraction per token, right? And that is bad economics for them, and they have to change. And so Cursor is like, well, if we make our own model, we can charge ourselves. So it's not a great place to be.
I mean, this is the classic dynamic with the web forever, which is everybody loves a big dynamic open platform ecosystem until the platform companies go, that's okay. We're just going to keep
Thank you.
We'll keep this part for ourselves.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Really appreciate that you hit our API all those times.
Yeah.
But it's now going to be 130 times more expensive.
Yep.
Now, Zed is one, it's extra nerdy, very open source, and Kevin uses it or did. And I want to know why. Why, Kevin? Why?
I do use it. There's two reasons I use it. The first is I'm not smart enough to use Vim. The second reason is that Zed. So a bit of background about Zed. Zed is a open source editor that was initially built to do like really, really good collaborations, like pairing, right? And so it uses like CRDTs and stuff to exchange code. And that's why I started using it.
For people who are just like a little less nerdy than us, think like Google Docs.
Yeah. Google Docs for code, basically. And because this thing is like open source and flexible, they built in a kind of chat interface for doing AI stuff. The main thing worth shouting out here, because they've since kind of been like, you can use this if you want or not, is that they pioneered a way to use tools like Claude Code in Zed and then open source this as a protocol. So now other tools are starting to use this approach to say, hey, if you just want to use Claude Code directly, but in the editor of your choice, you can do that. You don't have to use our AI tools at all. So that's nice. I've started using Claude Code in Zed. I don't use Zed's interface anymore for that stuff.
All right, so it's very neutral. It lets you kind of follow your own workflow. It's kind of very open. So it's just sort of a friendly tool for this new world.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome.
And then Windsurf, which I gotta say, I like.
Did it get bought, or they were gonna get bought?
And it's just very similar in intent to strategy to Cursor.
Just fly through those bullets, Ford.
I know, it's a lot of focus on, like, if you go to their website, it's like, they got a thing called Cascade. Like, it's everything has a name. And anyway, Windsurf. I'm sure if anyone from Windsurf is watching, feel free to go in the chat and explain to us why you're different. Because I gotta be honest. Honorable mention. We have friends we used to work with. They have a tool called Quest, but Quest is really worth noting for a very specific reason, which is that you can go to quest.dev and check it out. It's fully open source, but it's also local first. It's not a service. You can run a LLM locally inside of your network, and then you can run this against it, meaning that if you're a company that for whatever reason, government agency or security or something, where you really don't want to ever talk to and share data with a big with a big platform,
comes up a lot.
You can sort of take everything in-house. Does it have all the gravy and sweetness and wonder of the new shiny platforms that talk to the big platforms? No, because that's not how this works. It's a couple developers. But that, I think, is a really interesting model to keep an eye on. How can this get pulled away from the internet? How can LLMs run locally? How can you have more control over your environment? And this is a swing. And I think this is the only part where we're really going to talk about us, but I think it's important to point out why we're talking about vibe coding in general. We have a tool that we work with, and then we work with you using our platform to build products. And we're very product focused aboard. And I think, let me just throw it to you, Richard, for a sec. Like, compared to vibe coding, what is a board?
I think the best way to distinguish a board is that the core user is not an engineer. They are a business stakeholder, a business owner, a product manager. Code is sort of one of the phases in the process, in the journey of getting to the solution you want. And so it's a very, very different approach. Look, under the hood, there's some very, very technical things going on, but we are a platform that wants to give you your thing. And when we say you, we mean the people that are waiting for the engineers to get them their thing. Engineers will be involved because software is messy and the possibilities are endless, but we want to eat away at the sort of messiness of getting to a good first cut. And we do that with a very different approach.
So I think throwing it to Kevin for a second, right? So we don't vibe code; we create a vibe. If we vibe anything, we do a vibe software architecture. And then I think just talk about, because what happens then is in a few seconds we assemble your application.
Yeah.
So the work is kind of in the thinking strategy part and this one conversion. I think just talk about what it means for us to do that, Kevin. Like, we're deterministic; it's just different. So like contrast what we do to an AI writing code for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I forget who said it, but when we were talking about the spec stuff, we were talking about how it's a good approach. And those spec-based tools, I think, are halfway right, right? They use specs to determine how something should work. But the mistake that all these tools have made that we don't make, in my opinion, is that they generate code. And I think generating code is just inherently chaotic. So instead of generating code, we generate a spec that then we can run on our runtime. And that's like the main thing that we build is this runtime, which is not vibe coded, right? It's like people writing code. And so you get all of the things that you want out of a platform out of the box, right? Like security and deterministic behavior and all these things. But what the platform can do, the kind of features that are turned on and off and the structures that back it are all determined by this LLM assisted tool that you use up front, right? And so you get all of the benefits of very, very fast development without any of the downside of, God, there's code that we don't understand that's just running and it could do anything and no one's looked at it.
I mean, the trade-off, right, is we don't do a lot of things. You would never use us to make a game. You would never use us
Correct.
to
Social media
a
platform.
photo editor. Like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
are for a class of business applications where things like, I need to log in using my login system.
Database driven, logic powered productivity apps.
So we have an increasing number of customer/clients. I like to call them clustomers, but nobody will.
Ooh.
Yeah, go ahead, weigh in on that in the chat. The that is a board, and actually, we're going to now switch gears a little bit. We're going to do some role play.
Before we do that,
Oh no, my God!
disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Well, it's not even a disclaimer.
Yeah.
What do you call like after the book? Afterward?
And afterward, yeah.
And a quick afterward. We kind of poo-pooed across all these apps. The truth is this stuff is changing and getting better and better and better. And can the day arrive when a spec-driven tool actually ships fully baked software? Maybe. It is better today than it was 6 months ago. I think it's worth noting. But process and careful stepping through is going to be key.
This is the thing. Like, all of these tools are different riffs on process.
They are, and
Yeah.
they're backing into process.
Yeah.
They thought we could all shortcut by just typing into a prompt.
So you could build a lot of what we build. If you are a skilled developer, you can do a lot of that work in Claude following a pretty orthodox process.
An orderly, stepped process that continues to disambiguate as you go. Yeah.
But why do we continue to exist, and why do people keep reaching out to us? It's because they want product managers and sort of business analysts to be able to build products on top of their existing data. And they don't want to train them to think about that process. They want to train them to think about business problems. So it's that trade-off, right? Like, it's a lot cheaper to give people a tool like ours than to turn them all into developers who can use Claude Code, even though you can pull off some miracles with Claude Code. And I think that dynamic is going to just keep playing
I think that's
out.
right. That's right. I think the non-technical user got teased over the last year.
Yeah.
And I think they've kind of walked away, and we want to talk to that person. So yeah.
All right. So I made a playbill. Yep.
Oh,
This is the cast. I had it draw us. Really
interesting.
gave you a little Arab too. It really kind of went there.
Yeah.
ChatGPT. It likes
All
to
right.
do that. So this is us. I'm the true AI believer. You're the CEO, and Kevin is the head of engineering.
Okay.
I'm going to fire you both because I have been using Claude
Wait,
Code, and no,
I'm the
don't.
CEO.
Yeah,
You
I'm
fired me?
absolutely. I get to because I am an engineer. I'm a
Uh-huh.
mid-level engineer, and I have been given superpowers. I can build anything now. I can go into Claude Code and I can build any system I ever wanted. It doesn't always work perfectly, but I don't care. AI is just going to get better.
Okay.
So I'm gonna tell you, I don't need you to tell me what I can do. I can take products and launch them. I can A/B test them. I think your entire role is redundant. I can just build all day and take it from here because vibe coding is going to be that powerful.
Okay.
Why do I need you?
Because you're not a business person. You're also
But I can just ask AI to be a business person. I know that's ridiculous, but people say this.
I have a very dynamic business. I have a roster of clients. I have a bunch of partners that supply me raw materials. You know nothing about those
You don't think I can
relationships.
just put a chatbot on the website?
No, because I got to worry about my supply chain and my suppliers. Who, by the way, I go to their barbecues because I need to be first in line for wood.
Yeah.
Key part of my business. How are you going to solve that with a chatbot? I'm running a business. Also, I've got some HR issues in a file. You want to look at those too?
I mean, this is the thing, right? I feel that there's this maximalist, Kevin, you're next, get ready. I feel that there's this maximalist thing that happens. It happens to everybody. You use these tools and you're like, oh my God,
It's over.
it unlocked it.
Yeah.
What else is it going to unlock? And
Yeah.
then you kind of look around the room and you're like, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.
Yeah.
No one ever points to themselves, oddly.
Yeah.
Like,
Powered.
I don't,
Yeah.
increasingly, I just don't, I buy that there is a huge transition happening, but I just don't buy that. Like what you did is you were like, look, it's not that simple. You can't just like feed a bot a company and get a response out. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. By the way, there's a 4 p.m. HR meeting that I need you to attend.
Yeah, no, it's really when I mouthed off like that, I got I got in a little pickle. I mean, I'm going to ask you. You're a senior engineer, many years experience. You run a team. You're head of engineering, but I can build everything I want in a few hours, and AI is just going to get better. So why should I listen to a word you say? Why should I even be on your team? I can just build anything.
Yeah, I mean, good luck. What's funny is like I think that kind of the two cohorts who are most skeptical of AI are like visual artists and senior engineers because um I everyone I talk to who use these tools, they're undoubtedly an accelerant, right? But if you were to go and be like, well, I'm just gonna do me and just go by myself and build out the entire products, you're going to end up in these kind of hyper idiosyncratic, undebuggable places where you've gone really deep down the mine shaft and then your light went out and you're like, I don't know where I am or how I got here. And it's deeply disorienting to do that. I know plenty of people who have gone deep on Claude Code as a senior engineer and then pulled way back because they're like, oh God, I just
Interesting.
wrote 10,000 lines of code and I don't know what any of it does. And it's unmanageable.
Can I ask you an awkward follow-up question, Kevin?
Yeah.
200 engineers to 120 engineers. Realistic?
Oh, are you saying like downsizing and replacing those with Claude
Yeah,
Code?
I mean,
Hey,
there's
it's all attrition.
I personally do not think that Claude Code replaces engineers. It is a tool like any other. It's like one way to think about it is before Git, before version control, we were just like putting files on shared drives or whatever, right? And then Git comes out and no one said like, oh, thank God, now we can fire a bunch of engineers because we have version control, right? But all of the engineers got faster because they had version control. And it's the same thing here. These tools make you faster. I would also say, for example, that if I were building a growth program for an engineering, like a large engineering team, and I had junior engineers, I would consider banning them from using Claude Code because I don't think they would learn. It's kind of like
yeah.
I think many people have seen
When you
the
say
metaphors
learn,
about like, yeah, using a crane to do reps at the gym, right? They wouldn't be building any muscle.
yeah. Which, yeah.
I think this is a tricky one, but here's what I see happening. I think that the culture shifts a little bit, and I think that there will be some people are going to let their engineering teams go without thinking about it because that's how people operate, and they're like,
Yeah. The
I
time has come.
what I think is real here is a skilled operator can accelerate. I've gone really deep on what I have found is like I've gone really deep as a sort of former engineer, really trying to understand this stuff. And you do get into that hole, and then you have to back out of the hole and kind of re-architect and start all over again. That goes a lot faster than it used to, but it ultimately becomes indistinguishable from programming and ends up taking weeks.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't take years, and you can do things you didn't do before, but it's not like you can just sort of whistle a tune and have a tool. What I do think changes in engineering is engineering has been a culture of no for 50, 60, 70 years. And I think that successful engineering can become a culture of yes. And I think that is a real transition for a lot of people, like to
Yep.
be like, hey, let's try it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll probably throw it away, but we can do it this afternoon, where what that afternoon used to be like 6 months of planning. So I think there's that. A lot is going to get thrown away, and we have to embrace that. The other thing, Linus Torvalds, who created the Linux operating system, they're using Linux to evaluate code more and more, or they're using AI to evaluate code more and more.
Sure.
And he's like, yeah, it's fine. And he's been interested in machine learning forever. And he's like, it's pretty cool, but if you think about it, compilers, which take code and turn it into machine language, that was like in 1,000 times speed up. You had to like sit there and flip switches before those
Yeah.
showed up. And we don't think about that. That was in the 60s or 70s. But really, think about how many programmers there were in 1960 with IBMs. And
Yeah.
then suddenly Fortran and these new languages and these new ways of communicating make it way more accessible to use and do things with the computer. And you end up with like 50 million people in the software industry today.
Yeah.
Did not like this kind of progress tends to get spread out and lead to growth.
Implicit in that is shifts in skills.
Yeah.
Right. The the assembly language programmers weren't necessary, but it opened up a whole other breed of programmer and a
Okay.
lot more of them.
So I'm going to tear through because I want to go fast. I'm going to go real fast because I want to have time for questions. So the software development lifecycle, we know and love it. There's a lot of different definitions of the components of it. So I'm taking a swing from my own experience. But how do you make software and what is changing? And I think that let's just go beginning to end of project. I think that with vibe coding, you had stakeholder interviews. Just to be clear, I think what's happening is a lot of things are changing, but there's new risks. I just want to highlight some of the new risks.
Mm.
Stakeholder interviews, product strategy, problem statements, PowerPoints, all that. I think prototypes are going to lead, followed by feedback. It's just too easy to make
Why not?
something. Let people click on something, even if it's not kind of quote real, and then iterate based on that. You may throw the whole thing away and go back to programming the way that Kevin was just outlining. So I think one of the big risks though is looks done to me. I think things look really good a lot of the time coming out of vibe coding sessions, but haven't thought about security or they have weird bugs and so on. So I think you have to really, really be paranoid that the thing you're presenting, this is why there are wireframes, so that
Yep.
people don't get convinced that something's done
Yep.
and ask why it's taking so long. So I think like you have to be aware that you're still on a schedule. And just honestly, both of you just interrupt me. I'm just going to keep driving until because I want to have time for questions. So requirements and specs. Okay, we just did our prototype, so on and so forth. Teams used to go away, come back with tons of documents, people read and discuss. What's different now is the prototype that everybody liked and iterated on. You can say to the robot, turn that into the specification.
Write the
And
details.
specs can be anything now. They can be user stories. You can tell it to make a comic book. Like, however is the best way to communicate the quality of a system is
Mhm.
now approaching free and used to be unbearably expensive
Yep.
and really boring. But I think there is a real risk here, which used to be that nobody read the spec, and now no one is writing them. And there is this whole thought process that we are like, because it's pretty magical to get the spec in your hand after 2 minutes. But that thinking of creating the spec actually was a part of building a culture around the product.
Well, you had to fill in the blanks.
And then you were someone who knew it and could guide its development.
Yeah.
And so when you throw that thinking away, you have to actually figure out where thinking and planning is going to happen. Because if you just defer it all to the LLM, you're going to kind of be in trouble
Yeah.
because you won't know what you're building, why, or when.
Yep.
Right? And it's sort of like no one has a solve for this and no one is really truly addressing it. So now we get to the architecture phase. I got to turn the spec into something a little bit lower level. I have to say, like, database is here, cloud system is here. And so it was always, it's really a lot about risk, this phase. And it's always about finding like the one really good true architecture. And I think what's amazing is because now you can prototype architectures. You can say, hey, let's have, what if scale is actually pretty low at first and gets really big. Everybody tends to build for only one scale,
Yeah.
and like there's a lot of different ways to think about scale and structure and tools and what would be fastest to build now versus hardened later. And I think there's a flexibility built into this new way of working where you can really explore these different patterns and make some different decisions. But the larger thing is LLMs will propose and can even build out the platforms that you want, but they really can't make the decision for you. You need to sort of like have a sense
I
of.
mean, the recurring theme across a lot of these is expertise in all the phases that are like to validate what's coming out of these systems.
No, that's real. And so like I kept coming back to this while I was doing this exercise. So it's implementation coding. We know it's slow. We know there's constant scope challenges. The thing that ships is always a lot smaller. But now we have fast and cheap and sometimes good, but not always good. And
Yeah.
so like how's your culture going to change to receive 10 times as many iterations on a piece of software, right? And we have this risk. Kevin was just talking about the 10,000 lines. There is an absolute glut of bad code coming.
It's
But
just too much.
or also, Claude Code writes really good code, but it might have nothing to do with the actual business goal. And everybody's like, well, that's okay. It's really fun to play, but longer term, that's a real risk because people can be running around for months being like, I did it. I did exactly the right thing. And then you have a meeting and the boss is going to go, you did exactly the wrong thing. Right. And so like, how are things going to surface? How are we going to talk about this thing?
Can I interrupt that one real quick?
God, yes.
The other like really scary thing about this kind of generated code is that definitionally what an LLM does is produce statistically likely code, right? It produces code that looks correct. That's what it is supposed to do, right? Which means that when there's a bug, it's really hard to see because it looks correct, right? Like by definition. So when you generate a lot of code and then you review the code, it can be very scary to be like, oh, I think this is bug free. I've done my best. And then
Mm.
when there is a bug, you're like, well, I'm going to comb through this all now. That is to me the huge risk.
You know what's wild with this in my experiment? So I think that is totally true. I think if you're pulling data out of a database and putting it back in, like you're in a pretty good place. But when you try to do something subtle or something kind of experimental, you're really in no man's land. And the other thing is, I have been pushing like hell to get Claude Code to reuse open source libraries and modules. And it really wants to write its own stuff to the point that it will say, this is amazing. Thank you for providing it. But it's a little too complicated. So what I'm going to do is just write a much simpler version for you. And then I'm trying to experiment with DSP and audio processing code, and it literally just sounds bad
Yeah.
as a result.
Yeah.
It
It's not outcome driven.
it doesn't have ears.
Yeah.
And so this is coming for all of us. Putting words in a box and saving them to a server, this is going to be a good tool to use. You're going to get that stuff done nicely and quickly. But if you're doing subtle things that use more and more of what the computer can do, expect a lot of roadblocks because the guardrails aren't fully there yet. I will say one thing where I think we're going to be a lot of change is QA. Like humans wrote tests, they evaluated tests, and we have a few questions. We're going to go. Gabe, start throwing those questions in there, and because I'm almost done. The QA is increasingly, I think, going to be like Launch Playwright, which is a scriptable version of the Chrome browser. Test every component, save the test. Like I think it's just going to be you telling the computer. And I think
Why not?
I think QA is really vulnerable as a part of life. I also think migration is really going to go because you can, again, you can prove things. So the same thing that Kevin just talked about, where it gets really vague, you can also say, I need you to verify every single element that comes out of database A before it goes into database B. You can actually do that with mathematical certainty. And like when you can do that, that means that you can prove that a migration is correct and good and worked well. And if you can do that, you really probably don't need as many people working on it. To me, this one is a fantastic gift because these projects, everybody hates them and they always fail. We've been working on the migration for 18 months. And
It's
just
good at the boring stuff.
that's the thing. And so like this is a place to explore because I bet you have, if you're a big org, you have 50 products and databases floating around that don't have APIs on them that are kind of limping along, I think you can improve them. And same thing, it's the last one, which is I really, deploy this to DigitalOcean will be the new DevOps. Test it every 2 hours. Like I think that the complexity of the cloud is so vast, and I think this cuts through it like butter. The risk is real. An LLM can destroy your server like any runaway process. It'll share your keys. It'll do all sorts of bad stuff. So I think like getting this on Rails though, but I do believe like
The
the
ugly
yeah,
scripting
but the
and
money is going to be here. Like Amazon will be at the prompt. Amazon Cloud Services will
yeah,
be you asking it to do things,
yeah.
not 50 different icons. And then we'll get to questions. What do you get out of all this? You get really fast exploration. You get a lower cost of exploration, get a lower barrier to entry. But I wanted to throw out the triple A of software, which is there's accountability for these systems. You have to really understand and internalize and own and communicate the architecture of these systems to maintain them. And you need to know what your aim is and your business goal. And LLMs cannot, those three A's are out of reach, at least today, of where we are. And I don't think that even if people would like to go from 200 to 120 engineers, I actually think that like this
Train them into these responsibilities.
sustaining and building this culture, knowing that you can accelerate a lot of aspects of delivery, but that you might need to hit the brakes when these things are at risk, is actually where you need to go.
Yeah.
You should take advantage of this stuff as it's coming, but you shouldn't lose sight of these. All right, so let's call it there. Thank you for letting me drive through that last part. Let's get some questions in. We'll go a few minutes over. What else do we have to do that could be more important? And the question one is, can you talk about vibe upgrading from Noah HLZ? Does anyone else want to take that? I can wing it because I have thoughts.
I'd have to guess what that means
No,
first.
I think it's, migrating an existing system and bringing it in. I think if you look back at the things we were just talking about, data migration, turning things into APIs. If you have a good working system, that's a very strong place to start with an LLM vibe coding transformation process. So like, I think you can get from legacy system working an old janky way that makes you really unhappy every day to modern API driven, good data dictionary, rag search on the front. It still work. You still need to use your brain, but I think it goes a lot faster. And it tends not to be like, honestly, when we ask them, what are you going to do with all these engineers? Everybody has 5 years of roadmap. And if the engineers are not saying no, but are saying yes, maybe your business can like conquer that roadmap and get moving.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, an excellent spec is your existing software.
Yeah.
Like it's fully detailed out. Obviously, there are flaws in it. I still think you need a pipeline of work. You can't just say, hey, AI, upgrade this to some new platform and let it go because
You truly can. At least so far, I've tried.
it doesn't know what the bad
Yeah.
parts are. It
Yeah.
doesn't know what to do with it. Like it doesn't know a lot of things,
No,
right?
you
And so
need
you
to,
need your own pipeline.
honestly, what you need to do is I've done this. I took a legacy database and brought it into a new format, and you have to create checkpoints along the way for it to migrate
You
to.
need a pipeline.
First, you got to get it into a proper modern schema. Then you got to like figure out that your data has integrity going across. You have to be able to find every bug and every issue. And so like, but there are checkpoints, there are ways to do it, and it can go much, much faster, but it's still a lot of like sort of like thick brain work. I'm looking for that next question. Yes. Well, it's really Josh Grant. Hi. Test engineering. I mean, Kevin, talk about creating tests with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, so LLMs are very eager to write tests, which is great.
Because
We
engineers are
internally,
not.
sorry.
Because engineers are not.
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends. I love writing tests, but you have to be in the right mood. But we internally have kind of leaned into if you're gonna use Claude to do a significant change, please write tests for it, even if it generates the tests, and then you have to code review them. But then you at least have a kind of like level of assurance that what is generated works for a certain definition of works. And it's maybe worth shouting out. There's another comment in the chat by John looking to a Martin Kleppman article. I'm a big Martin Kleppman fan, but the article talks about like formal verification, which is a step beyond testing, right? Using something like Prolog to say that what you have done is correct. I'd love to get there, but yeah, like in general, I think that being able to say with authority that the code that was generated does what you intend it to do is essential.
What else we got? Are the LLMs eating the bad code? Oh, they are just helping themselves to bad code. They're full of bad code. Thank you, Greg. They eat everything. And so they produce bad architectural patterns. They produce a good example would be like here's an example that pops to mind, right? You sit down to make a new web application. And you do the exact same project. Do it twice. One will decide use a totally different component framework and backend framework and be like, oh, I'll use Express, or I'll use this over here in TypeScript. The other one will be like, oh, I'll just be all JavaScript. I'll do it. One will write it but itself. Like, there isn't actually a logic that is reliable about best practices built into these things. And that actually comes with an experienced engineer. An experienced engineer has strong preferences because of the pain of development. And so
one of the things worth mentioning here is there's an entire sort of invisible economy around tagging and wrapping metadata around all the content in the world that LLMs ingest.
Yeah.
So you look at GitHub. GitHub has some markers around what's a better repo than another, like the number of stars, how active it is, and whatnot. And when these LLMs ingest all that information to build the brain, they are factoring those in, but that's not enough very often, right? And so just because it ate the whole world doesn't mean it has good judgment about what's better than what. I think that's a big difference.
it's real.
Let's take one more.
Let's take like two more. People, if lunch isn't over, it's not
There's
over.
a meady one.
Kevin.
Guess this is
Yeah,
favorite got in
I've
here.
read this in the chat. I can answer it. Yeah, you're welcome.
Wait, well, it went away fast.
Do you want to
just
read the
kinda-
question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah. So it says, thank you for mentioning the idea of banning AI for junior engineers. As a junior engineer, I'm always grappling with this. When, if they ever, should junior engineers use AI? What if it's a small team and an enterprise level team? So yeah, it's a great question.
Very good use of Kevin, Kayla.
To make me, yeah. I would say, so like as a general rule, I try not to use, I think this applies to all engineers of all levels. I try not to use Claude Code to do something that I don't know how to do. So because that is how I learn. I learn by doing. I will have Claude Code do things that I know how to do very well, that I can review the code for, and that are tedious. So if it's just writing 300 lines of tests that I would just otherwise have to write myself, sure. But if it's learning how to do some squirrely like database reflection that I've never done before, I want to do it myself, even if it's like difficult and hurts my brain, because I'll come out the other side knowing how to do it. And I think if I were to see a junior engineer doing that, doing the hard work and moving slower as a result, but coming out the other side knowing how to do those things, I'd be so much happier than like, oh, they're 20% faster because they used Claude Code or something.
You know what I would say, and we should actually wrap up so people can get back to their lives. But I will throw a mild counter to you. It's not actually a disagreement. Like, that is the right process. I will say the LLMs are really good at explaining code, and they're really good at explaining how a system is working. And so let's say you're confused about something. Go find an open source example and then make it step through it and tell you everything that's going on. Like, I think it
loves to explain stuff.
Yeah, it's often undervalued. And then you know what's going on, and then you can instruct it on the next steps and write your code yourself.
Better informed.
Because you're better informed. And I will tell, I have learned more about, I'm trying to hack with audio. I've learned more about digital signal processing than I have ever learned before. The books are very dry, but doing it and listening to something actually make static and going like, okay, how do I fix that? And then really kind of looking at the math of it, turns out to be really motivating and interesting. So it depends a little bit on your learning style and so on, but these are good teaching tools. But the larger point that Kevin made is real. And also, I mean, I'll just be reductive. Like, Kevin's value to our organization is not that he can do things at the prompt. It is that he can think holistically about engineering, both as a human discipline and as a sort of concrete way to make computers do things and bring those worlds together. And so, like, his career is because he is good at those things. And so you want to build that career, because I don't think that career is going away.
Yeah, and just to put an exclamation point on what you're saying, it's tempting to not bother to learn it because it seems easier and it seems faster. But
and it's boring and difficult.
But it'll teach you. Use the tools that way. Like, upgrade yourself. Vibe upgrade yourself.
I have it make me little simulated animations of things if they're confusing.
Yeah.
Like you can have it
Yeah.
draw charts. It can do math for you and show you interactions so that you can understand, like, when does the database get hit or how does this index get formed? Make it teach you, and that can be really good. So, all right, we're going to wrap up. So everybody, I haven't had lunch yet. You did? You eat?
I did.
All right, Rich got me
I
lunch,
wolfed
but
it down.
I was getting this thing ready.
If you have questions that we didn't get to, email us at hello@aboard.com. We love talking to people.
We're also like, I kind of want to do some live vibe coding streaming. Like we're up for stuff. So
Vibe coding streaming.
yes, everybody can yell at me in real time.
There you go.
But Kevin, thank you for coming in from
Thanks,
Deep
Kevin.
City.
Thank you for having me.
It was very, very valuable to have you here. You kept us from just running off and not knowing what we were talking about. And yeah, everybody, it was great. We had good questions. It was good feedback. It's
We'll
always
do more.
Yeah, it's an honor to have an audience.
Thanks for coming on.
Any feedback, any thoughts, anything you want us to talk about, just hit us and keep an eye. We're doing more events. We love to see people in New York City, and we're very grateful. Check us out, and anything we can do to help you, just let us know.
Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.